सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। रामो राजमणिः सदा विजयते रामं रमेशं भजे। रामेणाभिहता निशाचरचमू रामाय तस्मै नमः। रामान्नास्ति परायणं परतरं रामस्य दासोऽस्म्यहम्। रामे चित्तलयः सदा भवतु मे भो राम मामुद्धर। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। हरि ओम। We had seen the 16th shloka last time, the hard nut to crack. If we see Bhagavad Gita as a whole, a lot of indicators of what Bhagavad Gita is given in Gita Dhyanam, where Bhagavan had said that all of us have good qualities. And what is needed is those good qualities should transform into seeking. That which brings about this transformation, that which gives birth to a sadhaka, that text is called as Srimad Bhagavad Gita. That is why it was called Ambatvam Anusandadami, Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim. That Mother Bhagavad Gita is the one who gives birth to a sadhaka, and it gives birth to the sadhaka and makes sure that this sadhaka is free from the transmigration of birth and death. That is why Bhavadveshinim. Bhavadveshinim means this constant cycle of birth and death. How does Bhagavad Gita do this? How does it give birth to a sadhaka? It is said by giving a lot of sadhanas. So Bhagavan has plenty of sadhanas in his bag, and one by one he will take out and give it to Arjuna. And Arjuna is a very good student. He will just take that sadhana and he will own up. To that sadhaka who has owned up this sadhana, another teaching is given from a Siddhanta standpoint. So both go hand in hand. First a sadhana, then a philosophical point is made. So Bhagavan has given one sadhana from his toolkit. Okay, that first sadhana was having the ability to forbear and forgive. He said not anyhow, but with a lot of inner maturity. I was reading one of Gurudev's quote where he said, forgiveness is the fragrance of strength. Means if you are able to let go of things without holding on to them, that sadhaka will develop a new inner strength. I remember when we had gone on our yatra to Rishikesh, we had stayed in one ashram. And that ashram was such, not, it was a very modest ashram. And on the banks of Gangaji, so a lot of mosquitoes. So in the room also, you will have like plenty of them to give you company all through the night. And the mosquito net was this big, so you wonder whether it's for rats or for mosquitoes or for what. So you had this constant thing going on, and you also felt like complaining, oh, this is not good, that is not good. And our class was at 7 o'clock in the morning, but whole night you couldn't sleep because something or the other would be going on. So morning I thought I'll go just outside, Gangaji is there. You can just go and sit by the river. And they have, that ashram had morning classes. Before our class, in another place, one Swamiji who was there, he was giving discourses, and there were brahmacharis staying there also. And sometimes you hear some sentences that stay with you for a long time. So while I was going towards that, towards Gangaji in the morning, I heard one sentence from this Swamiji. He said, in Hindi, he said, अरे ब्रह्मचारियों, छोटी छोटी बातों में लगे रहोगे तो बड़ी बात कैसे समझ आवेगी आपको? In English, it means, if you keep sweating over small things, how will you come to understand bigger things? And just that previous night, I had thought about, this mosquitoes and this and that. And I felt as though that Swamiji was speaking to me, that if you hold on to small things, how are you going to think about bigger things? This is exactly what Bhagwan has said in 15th shloka. He says, those who are able to drop those small pinpricks, they become fit for Amrutatvam. Yam hina vyathayantete purusham purusharshabha samadukka sukham dhiram somrutattvaya kalpate. Now, what is this Amrutatva that he is talking about? That he explained in 16th verse. Na sato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate satah, ubhayorapi drushtontaha tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Means one who knows the nature of Sat as Sat alone and nature of Asat as Asat alone, one who has clear understanding of this, that person is called Tattvadarshi. And this is that same knowledge which will release us from this bondage of samsara. Not only knowing the nature of Sat, but knowing that Sat I am. So what we will do today for some time is we will quickly recap what we saw last time. And then there were around 30 questions that were there. So I have tried to club it under certain titles, okay, which represent all those questions. And it might be questions that come to many of us, right? Not all of you might have verbalized it. How to understand Advaita Vedanta and in the context of all other things that are being told to us, our daily life and so many other spiritual practices. What is a holistic view of all of them, that we will see. So a quick summary of what we had seen last time. Many of you had asked for this one. So Bhagwan starts by saying that we can inquire into the truth through three doorways. Either you can go through Sat, or you can go through Chit, or you can go through Ananda. They are not three different things, but three different ways of inquiring into the same thing. If you want to inquire through the door of Chit, then you have to see the reflected consciousness. So there is consciousness getting reflected in this one individual, Upadhi. What is that thing which is the original source of this reflected consciousness? So that is one way of inquiring. In Drigdrishya Viveka, this was the way. Here in Drigdrishya Viveka, we did not see Sat as much. We saw mainly from Chit standpoint. Ananda also is there. You say Ananda is reflected in this mind. If there is a reflection, there has to be something called as original. Just like I see a reflection of the sun, just from that fact that I'm seeing the reflection, I know that there is an unconditioned sun which is getting reflected here. So if I'm experiencing little glimpses of joy, where is that ocean of joy? Where is that Ananda Sagara? So that is another way of inquiring. All of it will be done, but in this particular shloka, Bhagwan is entering through the door of Sat, where he says, anything and everything in this creation, whatever is appearing, that is appearing in that existence which is non-changing. Names and forms keep changing, but that existence is changeless. He says, what is the definition of Sat? Sat is that which never ceases to exist. That which is always there, that is called as Sat. What is Asat? Asat is something which is not there at some time. It has come into being, and then again, it becomes non-existent. That thing is called Asat. He says, can you give an example? This is the same example that we took last time, the pot. He says, this pot was not there before. It has come into being, and it will again go back if you break the pot. So, but what about the time when I'm seeing the pot? I can understand before it not being there, it is non-existent. After it is destroyed, it is non-existent. But while I'm seeing it, there is a pot. So then Bhagavan said, this pot is not available without its material cause. So only when you have the clay, that clay alone is appearing as this pot. So pot is just a name and it's a specific form. What is there is only clay. So this entire creation that we are seeing has come into being. Means there was a time when it was not there before, then it has appeared now, and there will be a time when it will dissolve. So right now when it is appearing, it is nothing but the ingredient with which it is made. What is that ingredient? He says that ingredient is consciousness, what we otherwise call as substratum. So that is Bhagwan's way of defining what is Sat and what is Asat. He says, if you want, you take a sequential step, dissolve all names and forms into 5 elements. Those 5 elements, again, take them back one by one, use Upanishads. And then you say, with Maya Upadhi, they have come from consciousness. So right now, I might be seeing them in a very different name and form. Once this knowledge is clear, that they are nothing but names and forms appearing in that existence I am. Then even if we are seeing names and forms, we know that what we are actually interacting with is consciousness alone. Now the student comes with many questions. Okay, he says, if you say that everything is Asat, everything is, whatever modifies, that thing is Asat, he says, then there will be nothing left. Everything will become non-existent. So Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji uses our own experience and points out something very unique. Because his point is not to say that Sat is some other thing somewhere else. Point of Vedanta is to say that Sat you are. So you see your own experience and observe it for yourself. He says every cognition that happens, there are 2 entities involved. One is if you have like a book, for example, right? So if I'm seeing a book, then there is a thought of a book that is formed. If there is no thought, I don't even have perception of a book. Sometimes when you have too many things on the table and you're trying to search something, eyes might be seeing that thing, but mind is somewhere else. You don't even see that thing. Means you don't register that I have seen it. And you search everywhere, here, there. Why? Because there was no thought. So unless a thought is formed of any object, cognition of that object does not take place. So he says that is one aspect. And second aspect is there is an existence principle from which this thought is borrowing existence from. That same existence is consciousness from which the thought is borrowing sentiency from. And through that, it is able to experience the world. So Bhagavan says that thought about a thing that can keep changing. As objects change, that thought about that thing will keep changing. But there is this existence principle which will never change. So he says, whatever changes is asat. Apply the same logic. It was not there at some time. It came and it went away. Whatever is non-changing, that is who I am. You know, this particular shloka is a beautiful shloka for meditation. Somebody can spend years together meditating just on this one shloka. To make it simpler, the sadhana would be, when a thought arises, right, in our mind, looking at that thought as something which has risen from consciousness. While it is appearing in me, the consciousness. And when it dissolves back into me, consciousness. So that is the implied meaning of this shloka. That looking at our thoughts as something different from us. So he says, this witness, this sakshi, sat vastu, that never changes. Okay. Other things might keep changing. So then the student asks, you said that, when you see this pot, there is existence plus this pot. When you break the pot, existence also gets broken, right? The pot does not exist anymore. Bhagavan says, no, that thought of existence continues in each and everything that we are seeing in the world. There is nothing which will be known as non-existent. Everything is of the nature of existence alone. So the student is still asking more and more questions. He comes up with another situation. He says, what if everything gets destroyed? You said if one thing gets destroyed, it is seen in something else. What if everything gets destroyed? Like what? He says, like in Pralaya, when the cosmic dissolution takes place, this entire creation becomes unmanifest. So isn't it that at that time, your sat or this consciousness also becomes unmanifest? Doesn't it also get destroyed? Or you take a simpler example, in deep sleep, everything goes away. Right? Whole world is dissolved. So when that goes away, even consciousness is also destroyed. So Bhagavan says no. He says expression of consciousness is taken away. Nothing has happened to the original. Just like we had seen the example of electricity. Right? When you turn off one particular equipment, expression of electricity in that equipment has been taken away. Nothing has happened to electricity by itself. Another example given is of a mirror. Right? When you see a mirror, you are standing in front of it. Now we cannot see our own face. We need some equipment. Like right now I'm seeing my face over here because of this camera. So you need an instrument through which you can see that reflection. If that instrument is taken away, reflection is taken away. Now, because that mirror is taken away doesn't mean something has happened to me. In the same way, even if these names and forms dissolve back, that Sat Vastu remains unaffected. That is the main thing. Now the student has final question. He says, okay, I agree that you said everything is asat. But still, why do you keep using the word, this world, and so on? You say this object. Means you are accepting that there is something called as this. On one hand, you say everything is asat. Another side, you say that there is this world, this object. Bhagavan says even that is not a problem. When you see mirage water on desert sand, don't you use the word this mirage? When actually there is nothing called as mirage water, there is only the sand. But for transactional purpose, you just use the word this mirage. So he says in the same way, this creation, all these names and forms, one who has understood as an appearance in that existence can use the same statement. Their vyavahara will go in the same way, but they will know that they are two different degrees of reality. One is an appearance, just like that mirage water. That real entity there is that Satvastu. That Satvastu you are. That is what Bhagavan wants to tell us. Means knowledge should override our perception. Okay. And who will be able to do this inquiry? One who has prepared their mind. So the previous shloka is the preparation. This shloka is the Siddhanta. And finally, Bhagavan says, "Oh Arjuna, I want you to come to this level now. I want you to push yourself so that you can get this Tattva Drishti and then see the world. World is not a problem by itself. Our misunderstanding of the world is the problem. What is the correct understanding? That this world is nothing but Sadvastu. And what is our understanding? That this world is nothing but name and form. We don't even use those technical ways. We feel this object is an object. This person is a person. Right? So Vedanta's inquiry is to recognize ourselves as that Satvastu and then see this body and all other names and forms as an appearance in that Satvastu. So this was a recap of what we saw last time. So now we'll take a few questions, which are, it might not be verbatim of what were submitted, but they were all related to certain themes. So I have clubbed them into few categories. How can we maturely understand the implication of Jagat Mithyatva? If everything is an appearance, why even work on doing sadhana? And sometimes it might look like we are just stretching this example to such an extent that it looks like, some casual statements that are being made and not thoroughly understood, which is true. Okay, so that is why Bhagavan will systematically unfold, and we also should know what we are talking about. So in Vedanta, it's a two-step process. Because Vedanta is not only interested in telling that Jagat is Asat, Jagat is Mithya. That won't remove our sorrow. That won't help us in any way if you directly dismiss the world as Mithya. First step what Vedanta wants us to do is understand that this creation has a substratum. Just like when you see that snake appearing on a rope, first thing for us to understand is that that snake is appearing on that rope. Let that snake keep appearing, but at least we know it has a substratum. So in the same way, this world of names and forms that we see is appearing in a substratum. Okay, that much is our first step. Second step Vedanta wants us is to go and inquire into nature of substratum. Just like in that case, example, Vedanta or that person will say, go and inquire into nature of that rope. So when we inquire into nature of rope, we realize there snake cannot appear. Mithyatva is a result of maturely understanding nature of substratum. So even in this case, when we first understand that Brahman is the substratum of this creation, and when we inquire into nature of Brahman, we realize it is changeless. It is that thing which cannot undergo any modification. If that has become the cause, if that has become the material cause, it only has to be through an appearance. Means just like that rope has become material cause of that snake without actually undergoing modification, in the same way Brahman has become the cause of this entire creation without actually undergoing modification. That Brahman, I am. That is the understanding of Vedanta. So mature understanding will come in this way. That not directly dismissing world as mithya, first understanding all this is having a substratum. And having understood this, interactions with name and form will happen with lot of dharma. We were discussing in some other class, I don't remember which class, that our Guruji has given a beautiful shloka outside. How should be our study of Vedanta? He says three things, One is, in our understanding, may we have this clear knowledge of Advaita Vedanta. What is Sat, what is Asat? In our heart, may we have the same understanding known in Saguna form, which we otherwise call as devotion. In our actions, that same understanding expressed as actions becomes Karma Yoga. So all these three things, when they go together, that is when we can live this knowledge and own up this teaching. Why do we have to do our sadhana if everything is only an appearance? It is that mithya mind is capable of giving a lot of mithya sorrow. The thing about this Vedantic path is, even after knowing that this conditioning is an appearance, it will not stop appearing. Means perception will continue. And if it is a beautiful conditioning that we have made for ourselves, it won't keep bothering us. Right? That is the main point. And what is the result of this knowledge? That is another thing which keeps coming. Result of this knowledge is, first of all, it will reduce our running around in the world for happiness. Sense organs will become more quieter, because what we want is happiness, and Vedanta says that happiness you are. So this inquiry should lead into more peaceful mind, a mind that is not again and again going outward. Another result of knowledge, all these are from Upanishads only, is that reduced jealousy amongst people. Why? Because of this understanding now, right? That I am that Sad Vastu appearing in each and everything of this creation. So person who has understood this, Upanishads say, Tatvona Vijugupsate. Result of this knowledge should be such that we don't feel a sense of otherness in anybody. Starting with our close family, near and dear ones. Because sometimes it is very easy not to feel otherness with somebody too far. But somebody who is right next to us, that is where we should start. That is the whole thing of the spiritual journey. It cannot exclude anybody. Right? That is another result of this knowledge. Then comes the concept or the topic of misunderstanding this teaching. If you just keep dismissing world as mithya, will it lead to some kind of hallucination? This path, is very, very thorough. We should gradually take step by step, hold on to our Rishis and Guru Parampara. We will not go here and there. Problem will come when we keep this ahankara, this body as satyam, and then start dismissing everything as mithya. Vedanta wants to say, question the one who is conducting this inquiry. Question this mind itself first. When you negate the mind, world will automatically be negated. This was our Raman Maharshiji's approach, where he says, Ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvataha, aipatatyaham nija vicharanam. Means before going too far into inquiry of the world, make sure that you have included your mind and body in that category called as world. So while you are negating the world, don't leave ahankara, this mind, as satyam. Through sadhana, what we do is, we make this ahankara mellower. Ahankara is not negated in any sadhana, but that ahankara is made weaker and weaker. What we otherwise know as karma yoga, where we say that Bhagwan, I am not the doer, I am the instrument in your hand. So this ahankara has become mellower now. that ahankara can be negated through knowledge. What we just saw, right? That practice of looking at thoughts as arising in consciousness, staying in consciousness, and again going back into consciousness. So that is the part which we should not skip when it comes to understanding this knowledge clearly. Everything will fit in, sadhanas will fit in, karma yoga will fit in, and how to transcend this mind also is given. What is the role of devotion in Advaita Vedanta? There were a lot of questions about what about Ishtadevata puja that we are doing, dhyanam that we are doing. What is the purpose of devotion then? So devotion also we should understand, it is that same consciousness with another conditioning that we worship as Bhagavan. What is that conditioning? Of samashti. That total mind, what we otherwise call as, that is our Bhagavan with whom we connect with whom we worship. And as we saw, Mother Bhagavad Gita wants us to actually benefit from this teaching. So devotion to Bhagavan is one of the best way of cleansing our heart, purifying our minds, and connecting with that totality. And Bhagavan says, if somebody is devoted to me sincerely, I will take care of that devotee. That devotee doesn't have to worry about when will knowledge come, how it will come, how I'm going to understand it. Bhagavan says, you leave it up to me. I will take care of everything else that is needed. Even if you study devotional text, they will never let go of Siddhanta. This particular shloka, 16th shloka of 2nd chapter, Na sato vidyate bhavaha, is the exact translation, or the exact translation of this is done in Mangala Charanam of Tulsi Ramayanam. What we chant before the class every time. Yanmaya vashavarti vishwamakhilam brahmadi devasura yatsatvat amrushaiva bhati sakalam rajjau yatha ahehe brahmaha. Means just as that snake is appearing in that rope, that snake appears or borrows existence from that rope, this entire creation is borrowing existence from you, Bhagavan. What is called as Sadvastu over here is the same Sadvastu called as Bhagavan Rama. In Bhagavatam, the first Mangala Charanam is the same. Janmadyasya yatonvayadi tarataha chartheshu vijñaswarat. The last line is Satyam Param Dhimahi. Same Satvastu is whom we worship as Bhagavan Krishna. So devotion will beautifully blend into knowledge, and it is not opposed to each other. In our heart, we can have that same love to Bhagavan, derive strength, and know that Bhagavan is very well taking care of our journey here. And if you see so many bhajans, the same philosophy will be inserted very sweetly. There are so many bhajans that we hear. Vishwacha Vishramare, Swami Maza Ramare. Marathi one bhajan is there, where one line comes, Mithyate Anekare, Satya Rama Ekare. That these names and forms are many, and they are only an appearance, and Bhagavan Rama is the only one who is real. Now, any deity, you can take it in the same way. Bhagavan Krishna's bhajans will be in that way. So devotion will beautifully blend in. What should happen with devotion is, it should take our mind away from our other, small attachments. That is the whole purpose of devotion. At least sometime during the day, if our mind can just be towards Bhagavan. And this same point is elaborated vividly in Bhagavatam in several stories. Naradji is telling this story to Ved Vyasji. He says, you know how a devotee is formed? how a devotee evolves? He says, not overnight. It's a long journey, and the main ingredient that helps a devotee evolve is devotion to Bhagavan. And he gives his own story. He says, I was born in this place and I went through such a hard childhood. But one thing was there, I had a company of Santa Mahatmas, and they kept teaching me a lot of glories of Bhagavan. I was also doing Vedanta Shravanam, but it never made sense to me. But gradually, as my mind started becoming calmer, I started becoming more devoted to Bhagavan. In Bhagavatam, there is one shloka where he says that this world of names and forms started actually appearing to me like another appearance. Previously, what did not make sense, the same Vedantic teaching started making sense. So this is the power of devotion. And that shloka we should keep in mind. That devotion is in our heart, in our understanding is Advaita Vedanta, and our actions will be in the spirit of Karma Yoga. Last one we will see. Why did God create this world and make it hard for us to realize our true nature? So a lot of questions were around. Why this world? Why this creation? Bhagwan would say, actually, I have not made anything difficult for anybody. We ourselves have made things difficult for us. World by itself is never a problem. They are just Panchikruta Panchamahabhuta, right? 5 elements in particular name and form. What is problematic is our raga dveshas on top of them. So that Bhagwan says, let us reduce as much as we can. And more we start unfolding from within, he says, world will not bother. We'll be able to stay in this world the same way as before, but with a new vision. And if you say, what is the purpose of this world? In sadhana phase, the purpose of this world is to serve. Means the best purpose, right? When we do karma yoga, it's like, when we go to a gym and lift something, we are not doing any favor on that dumbbell or that weight that we are lifting. We are becoming stronger by lifting that weight, right? Our muscles are building. So this world is also like that. We are not doing any favor on this world by serving. We are benefiting ourselves. We are gathering punya. Our mind is getting purer by serving the world. Okay, that is one of the best things why Bhagwan has given us this world. Another is, once having known the nature of this world, through the world, we can turn our mind towards that substratum. Just like once we know that this pot is nothing but clay, next time, even if you see the pot, you don't have to always destroy the pot and then get, the pieces of clay and then say, okay, now I know that this is clay. Even while we are seeing the pot, we can still shift our attention to the clay. What has made the difference? Knowledge. So in the same way, when the world is seen, Bhagwan says, you can still shift your mind to that same consciousness, which is our own true nature. Come to more practical application of this knowledge. Bhagwan says, don't have strong opinion about anything in this world. Anything. Only thing worth holding on to is that Satvastu. Why? Because everything else will change. You held an opinion about something. Now that thing has changed, your opinion is still there. You either keep holding to it or you be intelligent and say that I will hold on to that Sadvastu, my Bhagavan alone. These are secrets, given to us about Chitta Prasada. How to have a beautiful mind, how to have a calm mind. Bhagavan says, understand the nature of this world, how it is. And do what you have to do. later on, there is one shloka which is going to come, where Bhagwan Krishna says, Tasmad Yudhyasva Bharata. And he's giving all this teaching of Advaita Vedanta and everything. Conclusion is, O Arjuna, go and fight. Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji clarifies there. Go and fight, what it means is, do what you have to do. Hold on to this knowledge, and in the world, keep doing whatever is expected from you. Okay, so we saw the recap of whatever we had done last time, and there were around whatever questions were submitted. I just tried to frame it into certain categories. More for our own mananam, we should become mature to digest this knowledge. If we feel it is too high, at least we should know where we should reach and how all sadhanas will lead us into that. Okay, let us chant the next shloka now. Avinashitu tadviddhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartumarhati. So now, having told the nature of this sadvastu, Bhagwan is indicating the precise, having given the name of sadvastu. Previously, sadvastu, only one indicator was there, that it is something which never ceases to exist. Now he's giving more elaboration of that sadvastu. This again is a meditation shloka. We can just meditate on these pointers. First indicator is, it is avinashi. It never gets destroyed. And it is sarva vyapi. It is all pervading. Yena sarvam idam tatam avinashitu tadviddhi. Tat sat, what we just discussed to Arjuna, know that sat to be something which pervades this entire creation. Idam means what he is actually seeing. So Bhagwan must have shown his hand. You know, what you are perceiving right in front of you, all of that is pervaded by this sadvastu. Vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartum arhati. Of this sadvastu, which is avyaya, without any parts, no destruction can ever come to it. So three indicators. One is it is avinashi, indestructible. Second is it is all pervading. Third is it is without any parts. Now, when I think of myself, we should think whether these indicators come to my mind or not. If I think I'm going to get destroyed, means I've identified with this body. Moment to moment, destruction is taking place. Our thoughts are getting destroyed, means I've identified with this mind, and so on. Sarvavyapi, if I think I am limited, again I have identified with something else. So Bhagwan is telling, make sure that you own up your nature as that satvastu, which is all pervading. Now there are three ways of looking at this all pervading thing. Okay, or different ways. Let us not call it only three ways. You say we have this floor over here, right? And there is a nice carpet. So what will you say? That this carpet is pervading this floor. Right? There is a floor, there is a carpet, and you say that the carpet is pervading this entire floor. So is it in the same way that there is world and there is satyavastu, sat, and that is pervading this entire world? Bhagavan says no. Pervading, what we are referring to here, is just like the thread pervades the cloth. Means what? That thread alone is appearing as that cloth. Take this example also. Just like the clay pervades the pot, in that same way, this Satvastu pervades creation. They are not two different things. One thing alone is appearing as two. More precise example is that rope snake. That rope pervades that snake. Means what? Any part of that snake I'm looking at, what I'm actually looking at is that rope alone. So this is that pervasiveness which is spoken about in Vedanta. It is not as two different things. You know, there is one thing and another thing pervading it, just like there is this floor and a carpet which pervades on top of it. What we are referring to in Vedanta is that one thing alone is appearing as two. Vinasham avyasyasya na kaschit kartum arhati. There is nothing that this Sadvastu is related to, and that which is the cause of something, that cause cannot be destroyed by its effect. Just like that snake cannot come back and destroy that rope. That cloth cannot do any harm to that thread. In the same way, this entire creation, which is the effect of this consciousness, nothing in this creation can come and destroy it. That is what we mean by avinashi. Okay, that this creation is an effect. So whatever is the cause, that cause is nitya, it is eternal, it is all pervading, and it is partless. That is why it cannot be destroyed. More we will see in the next session. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.